Hey you guys, it's Laura here again, and I am here to be talking to you a little bit about foam rolling again. This time in this video, we're going to be covering foam rolling the lower extremities. So we're going to do the glutes, hips, hamstrings, quads, and calves. So this is extremely beneficial if you're doing anything that involves any kind of plyometrics, any running, or any type of sport really that involves running, because anytime your muscles are tight, if you have any knots in them or anything like that, it is going to decrease your range of motion, which means that it's going to be harder for you to generate force and generate speed, which is most of the time when we're running or when we're an athlete, that is something that we want to help us with our sport. But for normal people, pedestrian people, I don't know, however you want to call it, for the average day-to-day Jane and Joe, it is important because it is going to help prevent injuries, because anytime you have tightness or knots or decrease range of motion, it means that you're not going to be accessing as much muscle fibers. You're going to be decreasing the amount of work or force that specific muscle is trying to generate, which means that your body's probably going to compensate. It's going to substitute, it's going to try to get that amount of work from somewhere else that can sometimes lead to injuries or smaller muscles getting overtrained. So go ahead, grab a foam roller. I'll talk a little bit about the different foam rollers so that you know what kind to use. So I have two different kind of foam rollers that I like to use. One of them is just a smooth foam roller. It is a little bit more on the cushy side. So this is a great one to start with if you're new to foam rolling. I always tell my clients that when you are stretching or when you're foam rolling, you want it to be tolerable. It should, on a scale of 1 to 10, maybe be around a 4 and a 5, and then you can build up a little bit of tolerance to it and work through some of the tightness a little bit more, a little bit deeper. So this is a great one to start with. If you have one of these and you're like, I'm not really getting the most out of my foam rolling, I'm gonna skip it. Don't skip it. Foam rolling is super important. I would suggest that you upgrade your foam roller to one that has more texture on it. This one specifically has like little points on it, but there's also other ones where you can, they have like lines along the circumference of it, which will vary the surface, the pressure that it's putting on your muscle. And then that will help you get a little bit deeper into the tissue, a little bit more out of the foam rolling. And also we'll go over some kind of movements that you can do while you're on the foam roller, or even changing the angle of the foam roller are a couple techniques that you can do so that you can get really deep into the muscle tissue and help to lengthen it out. Let's go ahead and get started. All right, so I had mentioned that there were a couple different foam rollers that you could use. I am going to be using more of the one that has a little bit more contour to it, because I have been foam rolling for a while. But like I said, if you're new to foam rolling, you can always start with the smooth contoured one and then gradually work yourself up to one that's a little bit more aggressive, like this one. Like I said, you want it to be I wouldn't say comfortable, because it is uncomfortable, but you want it to be tolerable. On a scale of 1 to 10, it should be somewhere around like the 4 to 6 range, but you're not like grimacing your face as you're foam rolling. That is gonna be a huge indicator that it might be a little bit too much. So I'm gonna use this guy and start rolling out my calves to start with. I am just going to place it horizontally. I'll start with the side that is closest to you, and I'm going to put it on the meaty part of my calf here. So the meaty part of my calf goes on, and both of my palms are going to go onto the mat, and I'm just going to roll so that it goes almost behind my knee, and then I'm going to roll so that it goes down, not necessarily towards my Achilles tendon over here, just a little bit higher than that, so you can tell that it's a little bit lower than halfway down on my leg. I like to do one leg at a time because I find, especially since I've had a hip injury before on my right side, that one of my legs tends to be a little bit tighter than the other, so I just like to give them individualized attention. I have seen people use one of the longer foam rollers and do both of them at the same time. Not necessarily wrong, it just depends what you want to get out of it. Are you limited on time? Because if you're limited on time and you want to skip the foam rolling, then just do both of them at the same time. At least you're starting to work out the tissue. At least you're lengthening it out, allowing it to become more mobile, more pliable. These are all things that just give it more range of motion to help prevent it from getting injured. If you find a spot that's a little bit tight, then you just hold it. Belly in, glutes engage, and just let it sink in. You'll find that as time starts to go by, it will kind of just like relax into it. And that's what we want. That's the knot getting broken down. So I spent, I was gonna say 30 seconds, but I don't think that's true. I think I spent longer than that on it. I guess I'll see when I edit the video. Alright, so another technique that you can use, especially if you've been foam rolling for a while and you're like, I don't know if I'm getting anything out of it, and you have upgraded your foam roller, then what I would do is start to add a little bit of movement to it. So I'm going to flex my foot and then point my foot. And that is going to change the length of the muscle fiber, and it's going to identify if there's any knots. Once you find a knot, hold your foot in that position, lean a little bit of weight into the foam roller, and just let it sink into it. Like I said, it's going to help to break up the knot, lengthen the muscle tissue, and ultimately this is going to help you have more range of motion in your ankle, which means that you're not going to overwork your feet, you're not going to overwork your arch. Maybe you are someone whose feet hurt a lot. Maybe you're starting to get plantar fasciitis and you're like, I don't know why this is happening. Roll out your calves and see if it makes a difference. You can also tell that I'm doing a little bit of circles with my foot. That's another way to change the length of the muscle in the calf. Find any knots that are there. And then also what you can do is you can go from side to side. The muscle fibers go in an up to down fashion on your leg, on the back side of the calf. And so going from side to side is another way that you can change the angle in which the foam roller is hitting and massaging out without having to move up and down that way. Find the knot. I found one right here. And then once again, I'm just going to sit into it. And it's kind of just like, I feel like magic. I can just feel it go from that like, whew, that's a knot, to like, ah, that feels much better. Kind of like when you get a massage, right? When they find a spot and you're like, oh my God. And then the more they work on it, they stay in that position, right? The more they work on it, it just loosens up. Okay, next we're going to go to the hamstring. I'm going to go from, notice that I don't get behind the knee. This is a very delicate area. I'm not behind the knee, I'm a little bit above it. And I'm going to go, once again, from that spot all the way up. My hamstrings, I don't necessarily have that much issue with them. I don't feel like I have that much tightness in my hamstrings. I have more tightness in my calves. I do think that I overwork my feet, so I do spend a lot of time rolling out my feet and rolling out my calves. If you find that you have weak glutes, which I'm guilty of, something that I'm working on all the time, I see in myself and in a lot of my clients that also have weak glutes, that their calves tend to be really tight. All right, so I don't have any tight spots there, but once again, you can change the angle of your leg. Pointing and flexing is also going to change the length of the muscle behind your leg. You can sway from side to side over any knots and see if there's anything there that's bothersome. So I will do the side to side just because the hamstrings are comprised of a lot of strings. That's why they're called the hamstrings. But nope, just like I thought, no knots there. Look at me. So we can move on. I'm gonna do the IT band. So this one, I'm gonna take my top leg over. I'm stabilizing once again with my bottom arm. And we're gonna go from almost the hip joint down to almost the kneecap. I have weight in both my hands and also my crossed over foot. And what I really like about foam rolling is you get to choose like how much weight you want to put into the foam roller. So maybe as you're rolling, you're like, I don't really feel anything. Maybe you could try putting a little bit more of your body weight into the roller and see if that changes anything. Here, once again, you can point and flex. You can sit on a spot that has a little bit of tightness on it and feel it release. My IT band is okay, but when I get to the quads, I know that I am in for a treat. Before we get to the quads, I'm gonna go into my piriformis and my glutes. So that's gonna be right here on the outside of my hip. Go ahead and take a little bit of a seat on my baby chair. I'm gonna cross almost my ankle over my thigh bone, but it's not my ankle joint. And then from here, I'm gonna roll, this one's tight on me, forward and back. I'm a little bit tighter, more towards this spot that's kind of closer to my hip joint. And I'm gonna pull my knee in towards my chest, and I'm gonna press my knee away. That, for me, helps to identify the knot. Ooh, here's one right here as I'm in what this is called internal rotation. It's lengthening the muscle around my hip, and I'm just sitting in the spot and waiting for it to release. And then once you feel it kind of like let go, you can start that movement again. Up and down, finding another spot, and you can pull it into internal rotation and let it fall into external rotation again. I find those knots when I'm in that internal rotation position. All right, next we're gonna move on to the quads. All right, next we're gonna move on to the quads. I'm just gonna turn around here so that you can see we're still working with my left leg. And I'm gonna lay down on it. I'm gonna lay so that once again, I only have one of my legs on the foam roller. I like to work one at a time, but like I said earlier, if you are pressed for time, you can always do both legs at the same time. The only ones this wouldn't work for are to do both legs at the same time would be your IT band TFL and your glutes. Those ones you do have to do one at a time. So we're gonna go up once again towards the kneecap, and then slowly going down, trying to find a knot. Once you find a knot, just sit in the place. I always am pulling my belly into my lower back, keeping my shoulders down my back as my weight is on my forearms. You could also have your weight on your palms here, but I find I get a little bit more weight into my leg if I'm down on my forearms. And you just go and find those tight spots. After you feel like that muscle belly has kind of gotten rolled out, you can go into that bend and stretch again. And this one you can't tell, but I did put a little bit more weight into my forearms and lessen the weight through my quad.
And we're just gonna do this bend and stretch at a couple different places, making sure there's no knots that I'm missing out on. Ooh, this one here is the tightest. Okay, final. We're gonna take this at an angle. This one looks a little funky, but super important for being able to foam roll what we call the adductor complex, the inner thigh area, okay? So, like I said, we put this at an angle, and then I'm gonna put my thigh bone on it. It's the inner thigh area that's on the foam roller, and I'm gonna go towards the camera on an angle, and then I'm gonna come right back so that it's above my knee bone, in towards my pelvis, and then away. For me, my inner thighs aren't really that tight, but I'll go ahead and show you the different variations that you can take on this one as well. You find a spot where there's a knot, you hold it until you feel like that knot is starting to release, let go a little bit, and then also you can do the same bending and stretching. Bend and stretch. And there you go, guys. That is how you foam roll your lower extremities. Make sure you do that on both sides if you did opt to do just one side at a time, like I do. Or like I said, you can do both legs at a time for your calves, your hamstrings, and your quads to help to minimize the amount of time that the foam rolling takes. But I really think that you get a bigger bang for your buck if you do one side at a time. Really great to do it both before and after your workout. If you do it afterwards, it can help to minimize tightness and soreness for the next day or the next 2 days, depending on if you get delayed onset soreness. But definitely include it as part of your warm-up before you work out, especially if you're going to be doing anything that is involving plyometrics, running, or anything like that, because it really is going to help you access more power, more force, more speed, and just give you better range of motion during your workout. If you have any questions, go ahead and leave it in the comment box. I would love to hear from you and answer those questions. If you like this video, go ahead and give it a thumbs up so that I know that you liked it and so that I can keep creating content just like this one, a little bit of a tongue twister, so that I can keep creating content just like this one for you guys. And vote on what you want for your next video. Do you want another workout? Do you want another fitness tip? Do you want another tutorial? Let me know. I'd love to hear from you. Subscribe to my page, ring the bell so that you know when another video comes up. Can't wait to see you guys next time. Have a good one.